Success. Media. Network. 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 Network.
This is your show.
Good day, Successors. I'm Antonio Holman, and welcome to the 4 Principles of Success number 23, where I chat with successful people and entrepreneurs about how they enhance their businesses and lives in the areas of knowledge, health, wealth, and spirituality. Today, we're talking to Robert Bobby Klinck. Bobby is located in Washington, D.C., and is an intellectual property attorney who, through his company, Klinck LLC, helps entrepreneurs, startups, and innovators harness the power of their intellectual property rights and reduce exposure to lawsuits or brand challenges in the marketplace. Bobby prides himself on making the complex issues related to intellectual property understandable for non-lawyers. He has published 2 books about intellectual property law, The Entrepreneur's IP Planning Playbook and Patent Litigation Primer. He is currently working on a more ambitious project, a book to provide entrepreneurs with an overview of how to craft an intellectual property strategy from start to finish. Bobby, are you ready to help our listeners prepare for success?
I am excited to do so.
Great, excellent. All right, Bobby, so how about you begin by telling us a little bit about your personal life?
Okay. I am, like you said, I'm in Washington, D.C., but I'm not originally from here. I'm originally from deep South Texas, a town called McAllen. It's about 5 miles from the Mexican border and about 50 miles from the coast, so pretty far away from where I am now. But I was born and raised there, went to the University of Texas for undergraduate, then Harvard Law School, and I've kind of been between Washington, D.C., and then went back to Texas briefly for a stint, and then have lived in Washington, D.C. ever since. I'm married with a daughter who's almost 3.5 and 2 dogs in my house. And slowly but surely, my wife's family has been moving up to be near us, which is wonderful. So we have a lot of family and friends here in Washington, and I enjoy that a lot, but also I enjoy a little bit of other things, including brewing beer on the side. So the rest of the day today, Antonio, while we're not together, I'm actually going to be building things for my beer brewing enterprise.
Yeah, you're that's close to my heart, man. I am a fellow brewer as well, although it's been years since I've done it. I've done it twice. But I'm a huge beer connoisseur. You know, I don't just drink and eat crappy beer. I enjoy a good, flavorful beer that actually tastes like somebody put some time into it.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I get to actually make the beer I want and have it taste exactly how I want. But today I'm doing things that people may not think about as related to making beer. I'm engaged in carpentry to make a fermentation chamber so I can really control the flavor perfectly.
Wow, that's man, you got an operation going there.
Something like that.
That is so cool. Okay, for those who may not know, tell us a little bit more about what Klinck LLC does and how your company helps entrepreneurs get a hold of their intellectual property power and control.
Okay, so my company, Klinck LLC, it's just a small law firm here in Washington, D.C. We offer a lot of different things. So on the website, there's a lot of just information to help entrepreneurs and other people trying to understand intellectual property, which kind of backing up is essentially a catch-all term for any kind of property right that doesn't relate to something that you can hold physically or a piece of dirt. So anything other than that comes within that purview, and the website has a lot of information and basics. I've written, as you mentioned, those 2 books, and I'm working on another one. I give my books away for free to anybody who will sign up for my email list because I don't actually anticipate making a lot of money selling books about intellectual property. That's not my forte. My forte is really helping people. And the other way I do that is just by actually serving clients. And so there are kind of 2 parts to what I do. The first part is I help people with creating strategies and plans to get their ducks in a row, in a sense, to make sure they're protecting their rights, protecting their assets, but also to make sure they're not stepping on anyone else's rights. So to help them avoid getting sued or a dispute with other folks. And then the other part of my business is when people find themselves in a dispute, I actually will step in those lawsuits and represent them. So it's kind of 2 different worlds in many ways. try to do as much work helping people make plans in advance so they don't never get to the point of being in litigation, but sometimes litigation does come about, so I help them with that. So that's what I have currently. I'm also in the process of developing an online course. It'll be a pretty comprehensive online course about intellectual property issues and intellectual property planning for entrepreneurs, and I'll have that hopefully available within the next 60 to 90 days.
Now, what attracted you to intellectual property law versus any other type of law?
Well, I always like to tell people that I didn't find intellectual property law; it found me.
Oh,
and it's actually, Antonio, it's a common story among lawyers that many lawyers. There are some lawyers who know what they're going to do from the get-go and actually start right after law school doing that and spend their whole career doing that. But a lot of people end up just because they actually start working on a case or start working on a matter and build up some expertise, that's what they do. And that's what happened to me. But actually, it was later than most. I had been a lawyer for, I don't know, not quite a decade, but close to a decade before I first got involved with intellectual property law. And how that happened was after a stint as a federal prosecutor, so doing criminal law, again, nothing to do with anything I had done before or what I do now, I joined a small entrepreneurial law firm here in Washington, D.C., that had two partners and then one lawyer who would help as needed. And their expertise was in competition law, so it's called antitrust. It's about things that companies do that are illegal to gain illegal advantage. That's really their forte. But they also had this little case, or not little, but a case about patent infringement, so a patent lawsuit. And they didn't have any expertise or had never done one of those cases, and it got active right after I joined the firm. I, on the other hand, had never really done competition law, so they handed me this patent case and said, here, go run with it. And over the next, I don't know, probably it was 8 or 9 months of my life, I spent handling that case mostly alone with a little bit of help, but against one of the biggest firms in the country and probably a team of 8 to 10 lawyers who had been doing this their entire career. And I found that I just loved it. It was invigorating, and it was something that I truly enjoyed. So that was the start. That was about 7 years ago now. And since then, I've slowly but surely progressed so that pretty much all my practice and at least all of what I focus on doing has to do with intellectual property law. There are some things that I still do outside of that. When I'm advising people, I often have to give them some basic business advising issues, and sometimes there will be a dispute between partners or things like that they'll ask me to handle. But what I do mainly now is help people with any kind of issue that relates to the intellectual property.
Now, in this modern day and age of all this technology and everything, does that really impact intellectual property law? Does it seem like it's more of an important thing to get a hold of these days versus, let's say, 20 years ago?
Yes. I mean, it's more of an issue for a lot of different reasons. Partly, if you think about it, and let's go back a little more than 20 years. Let's go back 40 years, for example. So that puts us, in the mid-70s. That's really pre-internet. It's before a lot of things. So most companies at that point had a lot of hard assets, right? That's what they had. They did have their brand. And so your brand, that's a trademark, for example. That is an type of intellectual property. And they might have had copyrights, which is a branch of intellectual property that covers creative works. So it could be a book or anything written, really, music, a movie, anything like that. And they would also have some other just proprietary information, which is called a trade secret. But a lot of their assets were hard assets. I mean, it was actually the physical plant was what they had and was a big part of their advantage in the market. Well, shift to today, and that's just not the case anymore. Nowadays, you think about it, yes, there are still those big companies, the big steel companies, for example, that they are big manufacturers and they have this huge infrastructure. But a lot of what companies have today is purely about knowledge. It's a knowledge-based economy. And the internet especially has accelerated things. In fact, according to a lot of valuation experts, they would say that on the low end nowadays, companies, about 40% of their value comes from intellectual property. And on the high end, you're well over 90% of the value of a company has to do with its intellectual property. And startup companies, small entrepreneurial companies tend to be on the higher end, not the lower end, again, because they don't have a bunch of infrastructure or a manufacturing plant. So it really is today that intellectual property is almost certainly your biggest asset as a company. And so because of that, it's a pretty important issue, and there's a lot of disputes that come up as a result as well.
Okay, so just to keep it ultra simple for anyone else who doesn't really understand, what specifically is intellectual property?
Okay. Yeah. So like I mentioned, it's really anything that's not tangible. So as I sit here, I'm holding a pencil. That's a piece of physical property, obviously. But anything other than what I could hold or like I said, a piece of dirt, so a piece of land is intellectual property. And I kind of went over them in I think my past answer, but you have 4 major areas of intellectual property. One is patents. So a patent is something that protects an invention. It could be that the invention is a particular widget or a particular machine. It could also be a method of doing something. And there are some others, but those are your biggest types of patents. To get a patent, you have to go through a back and forth process with the government here in the U.S. It's the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And you kind of go back and forth with them to get that right. And if you get it, you get the exclusive right to make, use, sell, or offer for sale that invention within the United States for a certain period. As part of that, you have to disclose it. You have to lay out what it is so that everybody else can understand it. And the point is to hopefully advance knowledge over time. Patents are the area of intellectual property that a lot of companies at least think about the most. And I think that's probably a mistake for at least for small companies, because patents are very expensive to get by comparison to the other forms of intellectual property. And they're also very unlikely to lead to value. Less than 5% of patents ever result in someone selling a product or getting a dime paid to them by someone else making a product that is that invention. So think about that. People are spending a ton of money on these, and less than 1 in 20 actually results in any value coming back to the inventor. So, it's an area that's important. And if you have an invention that is really cutting edge, et cetera, it can be an important tool. But companies should be careful not to put too much focus there. The next area is trademark. So that's branding issues. So think of your name, your slogan, your logo. It's anything that identifies the source of a product or service. So the source being the company or person who made it. So the classic example, Coca-Cola, for example, that name is a trademarked name. And so is their logo with kind of the scripted Coca-Cola. That is also trademarked. That you get certain what are called common law rights in trademark just by using it. In other words, as soon as you start using a name, you will start to gain some rights to use it against other people and to prevent other people from using it in certain circumstances. So that comes up for free. You can also register your mark with the federal government. There are also some state ways to do that, and then internationally. But that is it costs some money, but again, it's small potatoes compared to a patent. Think on the order of $500 per category that you want to have it registered in. And so again, that's kind of in the weeds on categories and all those things, but it's something that you can consider with a little bit of help. The next category of intellectual property is copyrights. So we talked about that. A copyright covers a song, a movie, a video, anything written, really. If it's a creative work you get protection. And again, a lot of people think you have to register, you have to take steps. Actually, you get copyright protection automatically the second that your creative work is in fixed form. So again, as soon as you put something on your website, assuming it's creative and has some element of creativity, it will gain protection. You can go through the process of registering it, but most people don't. You get some added protection and some added benefits if you ever have to sue someone for copyright infringement if it's registered, but very few people do, other than for things like books or if you're a recording artist. Pretty much every time you make an actual CD that you're offering, you would have that registered, et cetera.
Yeah, that's the intellectual property information that I'm familiar with because I'm a musician. So that's what we always, had to kind of read about and learn about a little bit. And just what you said, once you make that recording, that's your property, your intellectual property right there in your hand. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you, Antonio, I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you remember the days. I was actually in a band with my brother back in high school and college. He still plays and has been trying to, he's actually goes to Europe quite frequently with his band.
Oh, cool.
But so I remember back in the day, we would actually, and I think we did it once or twice, actually put a recording, a tape or something in an envelope and send it to ourselves thinking somehow needed to do that. You don't need to do that. I mean, that that'll help prove when you had it in form. But, it's kind of funny when you think about the fact that we did this when we were a garage band in McAllen, Texas in high school. I think we did this. And it's kind of funny to think about that we had those high hopes back then.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that are still doing that are mailing, physical pieces of their work to themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it could kind of be helpful because it establishes a date. But you don't have to do that. You can establish a date a lot of different ways. So, not outside of copyright, what will happen, in the patent world, most inventors will keep a journal where they are a notebook where they have dates and they list what they're doing and what they're thinking so that you can go back and recreate it. But, dates can be important. But again, nowadays, obviously, with most copyright disputes, it comes up from someone taking it from online or from some other source where there's going to be a record of when you posted it. So, hopefully that'll, take care of itself these days.
Mm-hmm. Bobby, you're bringing the information. You're bringing it. That's good. I like that. I really enjoy this because a lot of these people who are looking, to try to be successful in something, mainly like business types of things. And now, even musicianship or creative works of any type, you're bringing it, man. I appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome. Let me tie up the end there. There is one other kind of intellectual property I should mention, and that's trade secrets. And the reason I should definitely mention this is it's the least known. It's what a lot of people don't think about. But it used to be the case that this was all protected by state law. Recently, there was a federal statute passed. But essentially, a trade secret is any commercially valuable information that you as a business take reasonable steps to keep confidential is entitled to protection as confidential information. One of the most famous examples is the Coca-Cola formula. That is something that's been kept a trade secret for over 100 years. Fewer than 5 people even know the complete formula. It's the only written copies are stored, as I understand it, in a bank vault in Atlanta. I mean, obviously, most people don't have to go through those kinds of steps to protect it. But if you have confidentiality agreements with various people who have access, that's the kind of thing you need to do to protect that information. And for a typical entrepreneur, let me give you an example of something that you would have that would be a trade secret. Your customer list is a trade secret if you take steps to protect it. And the value of keeping that protection is that way, if one of your employees walks out the door, they can't just take your customer list and start going down the list and start calling your customers and trying to poach them. So that's the type of thing that companies need to be thinking about.
Wow. I never would have realized that. That's good. So what was the first entrepreneurial venture you've ever gotten into, and how old were you?
I think the first one would have been when I had a paper route. I'm trying to think when that was. I think it was 4th grade, something like that, 4th or 5th grade. I think I did it 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. I grew up in Texas, so then and this was in my hometown. We would deliver the papers in the afternoon, not in the morning, and so I had to quit. Like I said, I think it was when I got to 7th grade when I started playing football. That was kind of when you would start having school activities after school. So I think it was 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, however old you are at that point in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it was like 8 or 9 or something.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Maybe a little younger. Okay, so as we know, life's a giant roller coaster. It's never always just peaches and cream and sunshine and daisies. What was the time where you felt most unsuccessful in your life?
I mentioned that I joined that entrepreneurial firm where I got my first taste of intellectual property law. Well, I joined them. I was called a partner, but I actually wasn't a partner. I was not in the partnership agreement. I didn't have an entitlement to any percentage of the profits. Instead, I came – the firm was relatively new. They didn't have steady income. I came with, I think, under the terms where I had a certain salary, but I acknowledged that the firm didn't have cash flow, and I would only get paid when they had cash flow, and I would be, would get paid back in a sense, but that was the deal. And we didn't even have anything in the agreement, and this was a big mistake I made. And so this is something that I now use this lesson to help teach entrepreneurs of not to make this mistake. We didn't have anything in writing about how I would eventually become a partner of the business. And so I was basically under an agreement where I had all the downside risks. So if the company didn't make money, I wasn't going to make any money. But I didn't have any guarantee of the upside. Now, I was there for almost 4 years. They treated me unbelievably fairly. We split the money, not exactly evenly, but I got almost as much as them, with them getting a little bit more because they were the original founders, which made sense. Then my wife got pregnant, and I said, hey, we need to actually formalize this, make me part of the agreement. And that was – so I think, we announced the pregnancy or something during the summer, and I kind of brought the issue up to them, let's say late summer. I anticipated we wouldn't actually do anything till year end because just for tax purposes, it would make more sense to do it cleanly kind of at the beginning of the year. Then right around the end of the year, we had some brief discussions, and, it didn't go anywhere, but, it kind of was left with, me expressing to them, I think, a general belief of saying, hey, and let me back up. So a lot of the cases at that firm were on a contingency. So we had been working for many years on cases that still hadn't paid off and would pay off in the future. So what I had expressed to them was I said, hey, what I would like to do is come up with an agreement where you figure out how much percentage of everything from the past, including for the past 3.5 years that I've been here, you can keep. Give me as little as possible of that so that I can be as close to equal. I said, I don't expect to be even with you, but as close to even as possible for new cases coming in. The thinking being, hey, that way we're kind of all on the same team, et cetera. And so that was kind of where it was left. And then 2 months later, so at the end of February, is when we picked up the discussions again. And we picked it up because one of the partners actually didn't live here in Washington, but he was in town. And I was taking him to the airport to head back home. And as we were walking from the office to my car, he said, I don't remember what he said, but he brought up the subject. And I don't remember what he offered, but it was not good from my perspective. I mean, it was, it seemed to be unfair, but also just didn't seem, to be within the spirit of what I thought, or what I had expected. So, and also I had actually been the quote admin partner, so I knew what the revenue had been, so I could do the math in my head of understanding what that would have meant for me. And it wasn't good. So I dropped him off the airport, called my wife. She could tell I was not in a good place. She said, I need you to come home right now. So I did. I didn't go back to the office. And that was a Friday. We then, I literally that Friday, I registered the domain name for Klinck LLC and filed the paperwork to form a corporation. I didn't know, but I said, I better just do this just to be safe. And then I guess the next morning I was, hadn't slept much, didn't feel good about it. And I felt like just sitting there and stewing wasn't going to be good. And I hoped that we could have a productive conversation. So I emailed them both and said, hey, can we talk? And so we were able to set up a call for the next day on Sunday. And during that call, and this is the nature of what happens when you get in these discussions like we did 4 years after we should have had the discussions. Everybody starts trying to justify their value. And the problem is that if you think about it, it's a zero-sum game, right? I mean, you have to add up to 100%.
Right.
So in me talking about my value and each one of them talking about their value, it almost inherently – is kind of why I'm more valuable. And so the conversation was not productive, was not fruitful, to the point that when we got off the call that day, I was sitting there holding my 2-month-old baby, and I looked over at my wife and my brother-in-law, who was in my house at the time, and I said, let's go to the office. And I went and I packed up my belongings and left. I don't think I left my key. I may have, but literally there I was with a 2-month-old baby, not having anything and not knowing what to do. I mean, I say not having anything. I had money from, that I'd saved personally, et cetera, but professionally, all of a sudden I have nothing. Mm-hmm. And I had to decide what to do. So I would say that was kind of my low point. And it was just this, it felt like a real a blow to the stomach, or something just horrible, because these were the people that I'd been kind of going to war with for the last 4 years, and all of a sudden I felt like we weren't on the same side. One of the strangest things about it, I mean, one of the guys, my wife and I had gotten married in the Bahamas, and Hurricane Sandy happened to be an unwelcome guest at the wedding. Uh-huh. One of my partners was literally on the last plane in. I mean, this was like a 10-person commuter plane flying through tropical storm weather. I mean, so this is, in a sense, how close we were, and yet because of a stupid mistake I'd made 4 years earlier of not getting the agreement in writing, mm-hmm. it fractured that relationship. Oh. And so, we've improved. We're, things have gotten better since then, but, and time tends to heal things. But I learned an important lesson in that, and that is always get it in writing. And I stress that to every entrepreneur I work with. If you have an agreement, if you have an understanding, get it in writing. And if you don't have an understanding, you need to talk about it now and get to an understanding and get it in writing, because it's not going to be easier later. So that's one of the things I really stress for everybody I work with.
Oh, yeah. That's absolute truth right there. Well, what was the first step you took to come out of that dark place?
Well, so I had a couple of things that I had to decide. That one was, did I want to go out on my own? Did I want to try to go back and join a firm? So I reached out to a legal recruiter. I was kind of in a weird place in my career, meaning lawyers, there are various kind of seniority levels in your career where you're easy to kind of go somewhere and find a job at another firm. And I was not at one of those places just because of where I was in my career. But I said, hey, what the heck? So I reached out to a recruiter. Then I also reached out to a firm I had worked at, I don't know, it was probably 8 or 9 years before, that was here in Washington. And they said, well, let's think about it. But then I just started doing other things and getting into action and trying to figure out, okay, if I'm going to go out on my own, how am I going to do that? What would I do? What would it look like? And so I started just thinking through and making a plan. And then I ended up reaching out to a guy that I knew, and it was partly to see if he had a job up here, because it was an attorney with a firm based in Texas that I had kind of crossed paths with various times. At various points in my career or my life, I'd thought about moving back to Texas. I'd interviewed with him at one point. It never really went anywhere, but not because of a lack of interest, just it never really was finalized. Then while I was a prosecutor, he had tried to recruit me to join his firm, but I wasn't yet ready to leave. But so I knew that he had one lawyer listed on his firm here in Washington. So I said, well, let me reach out to him. So I reached out to him, and he said, well, no, we don't really have an office in Washington. We just have this attorney who's kind of what's called of counsel, which means she just pitches in and helps. Mm-hmm. But he said, hey, it's funny that you should call. I said, why? He said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I do intellectual property work. And he said, and his firm did professional liability, so malpractice cases, mainly against like lawyers and accountants and things like that. And he said, well, we just got hired on a legal malpractice case that has to do with a patent lawsuit. And we don't know anything about patent lawsuits, so we might need some help.
Wow.
So I had that discussion with him, and while I'm having that discussion with him, and it was never going to be a full-time job. It was going to be a kind of one of those of counsel like the other attorney here, where I would pitch in and maybe I would get a set fee monthly to help them on this one case. And so as I was talking with them, my old firm that I'd been at 8 years earlier made me an offer, said, hey, we could use you to come in and be, it would be a full-time job. It would have been financial stability. But the problem was it had nothing to do with intellectual property law, and I wasn't really going to be able to build my practice because I was going to be having to work 2,500 hours a year on these other matters for them. So I faced a choice. I basically had a situation where I could choose to go out on my own, and this deal with this firm in Texas, I was able to kind of use the offer from the old firm to get him up so that he was going to pay me on a flat monthly fee half of what I was going to make at a full-time firm. And I talked to my wife, and we did a lot of soul searching, and we said, well, if I'm ever going to be on my own and start my own business, now's the time. And so we did. We went that route, had that, first relationship come in, had a client come in soon afterwards through a referral of a friend that it was a contingency fee case that luckily, those are often slow developing cases that will take you, say, 18 months or 2 years to see anything. But luckily, after about 6 months, it resulted in a pretty nice payment for me, which kind of helped sustain the early stages of my business. So that was how I started. And then I just started doing the things you have to do: marketing, networking, learning. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but that's what I did. Yeah,
learning.
Yeah, and I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. One of the big mistakes I made is I tried to cast a wide net. Instead of saying I am an intellectual property lawyer, I tried to say, well, I'll do this and I do this and I do that and I do that. And the problem is then you just, who are you talking to? How can you have a marketing strategy when you can't even say what you do? Because I couldn't have an elevator pitch because I said I did 18 different things.
Right. Yeah.
But so I learned that lesson. But also, I dug in and I had to learn about, I knew nothing about marketing at all, but especially about, internet marketing or inbound marketing or any of those types of things. And so I just started learning and I still try to learn. I'm not an expert at any of it. I'm probably just dangerous enough in a lot of different areas.
Yeah. Marketing is still a dark art that everyone is still learning. And actually it evolves, it seems, every couple months anyway. So that's never going to stop.
Yeah, the problem is as soon as I feel like I'm proficient at one thing, then it's
yeah, exactly. It just changes on you.
Yeah.
What do you feel is one of the hardest things that has been very difficult for you to overcome in your business, but you've since conquered it?
I would say it's the fear, and I think a lot of people will relate to the imposter syndrome at various points. I will feel like I'm playing the part of a lawyer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because look, you just have to be willing to do things, and the problem is I always focus on what I don't know or haven't done within a particular area or with a particular very small area, not focusing on the fact that I know a heck of a lot more than 99% of the population on that area, but still I will often fixate on, the little bit I don't know. And so that imposter syndrome is one of the biggest challenges that I face. And at some point I just said, cut it out. Just you are. I mean, you are an intellectual property lawyer. You are proficient in all of these things, and I've been doing that for 7 years now and haven't had a problem yet. And so it's that. I mean, and it's just the fear of the unknown, or as our former, Secretary of Defense, the unknown unknowns that will sometimes get to me.
Yeah, I think for those of us that are striving for something more, we always get that little touch of imposter syndrome for sure.
Yep.
What was the most challenging client or client-related situation you've had, and how'd you resolve it?
Well, so the problem with being a lawyer, and this is something that no one teaches you in law school, and not only do they not teach you in law school, but you don't even learn it until you get to the point of having the chief responsibility of dealing with clients, is that we have to have so many different skill sets. We have to have our proficiency in our actual subject matter. But then we also kind of have to be psychologists or psychologists, I guess, because, we have to deal with just crazy things. Like I can think of one client, and it's hard. I have to be careful because as a lawyer, there are limits on what we can talk about, but I've had clients who from day to day will just shift from, ultra aggressive and confident and saying, let's go. And then the next day it's like, oh my God, we're going to lose. And you're like, what happened from yesterday? Nothing really happened.
Yeah.
And so kind of dealing with that almost like a bipolar syndrome of clients, that is the biggest challenge. And what I've found, the best way to deal with it is just to be steady. And I have to be the steady state that, the client can kind of fluctuate against. So when they're in their highest highs, I have to kind of pull them back and say, look, I mean, yes, I'm confident, but let's not be crazy here.
Yeah.
And then when they shift to their lowest lows, I have to be saying, no, come on. It's not bad. And so it's that. And that's how I've done it. And I've dealt with that. That's a persistent problem I have with clients. And some clients are just always way too excited and happy, and you have to always try to bring them back. And some clients are just always too negative, and you always have to bring them up. And part of the challenge of being a lawyer and dealing with clients is figuring that balance out.
Yeah, all of this thing about success, all these things about success and becoming successful, it's all related to psychological relationships. That's what I've really realized, man. That's more important than the business deals and this and that. And it's like that rules everything is relationships.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the fact is you can be the greatest lawyer in the world, but if you can't build a personal relationship with people, no one's going to hire you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hilarious. I've made this comment to so many people. When you look at the most successful, like the richest lawyers, they're never the best lawyers. And they're also not the lawyers who went to the best law firm or the best law schools, quite honestly. Because those people, the people like, most of my classmates who went to the best law firms, you have this easy, safe route. And going the easy, safe route, you're going to be successful maybe, but you're never going to have to grow, and you're never going to have to build all of the skills you need. So I think the challenge actually in building those social and psychological skills, those are the most important skills for anybody in any business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've learned that because I've struggled for years being somewhat of an introverted person. Now I'm just forcing myself out there, and it seems to feel all right with me. No big deal.
Yeah, I can relate because I'm a lawyer, and I love talking to people. One-on-one is fantastic. Small groups are fantastic, but you throw me into like some, big, 300-person networking event, and I hate it. So I can definitely relate. And the trick is learning how to play to your strengths, I think, and how to develop a marketing strategy, et cetera, that fits with your personality.
Yeah. What one thing in your business are you currently struggling to overcome?
Well, I would say that the biggest problem I face in my business is educating entrepreneurs on the need for my services. And that will be a perpetual problem in my business. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business people don't think about intellectual property issues until there's a problem, until there's a dispute. And, I'm trying to get people to stop doing that because will tell them, hey, spend a day or two planning up front, and you can avoid weeks, months, years of pain and heartache later. So I'm trying to get that message out. That's part of it. And the other part of the issue, quite honestly, is that if you're a dispute-based attorney, which is what I did for much of my career, meaning, you handle lawsuits primarily. If you think about it, it's hard to develop a marketing strategy for that because you have to be hitting them at the perfect time when they have a dispute, right? Or you have to be top of mind when they find themselves in a dispute. So that can be a hard nut to crack. Again, that's part of my business is the disputes. The other part is the kind of the planning, and that's where I'm focusing these days. And I'd like to be able to get more and more entrepreneurs to just understand that they need to be doing this, whether with me or with someone else. Just get these plans made, and I think that will take care of itself. If I can educate enough people, I will. There's no question I will be able to make a wonderful living for the foreseeable future.
Now, here's one thing I've been thinking about actually over the last couple of days is, for example, Facebook has added some features to their app that is extremely similar to Snapchat. And to me, well, let me ask you, does that seem like that's a possible intellectual property infringement of some sort? That's a slippery slope, big time.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to know a lot more to answer the question. And the fact that Facebook did it and Snapchat, and I'm trying to remember. So Snap is independently owned, but I would gather that Facebook. Well, no, let me walk that back. I know that Facebook has a ton of lawyers, and they have a ton of lawyers who look at intellectual property issues. Mm-hmm. So I suspect they would have vetted it. That being said, that's not a guarantee that everything's okay.
Right.
But I would gather, and again, so part of the issues, I mean, a feature of a product isn't necessarily protectable. Again, let me back up. The only place it would be protectable is if you had a patent, because anything else, maybe look and feel, you might have some argument somewhere else, but it would have to be a patented feature. Mm-hmm. And to get a patent, you have to prove that it's not obvious. So is it obvious to add a certain feature, a certain button to a certain application? Well, that can be a hard question. So, it would be hard to say for sure. I'd have to dig into it. You'd have to give me more specifics, and I'd have to do a little bit of research to find out. But like I said, I would suspect that Facebook did a lot of due diligence before they launched those features.
Man, that sounds like a giant bowl of spaghetti.
Well, it is.
Man.
And, I mean, the other reason why I think Facebook would have done it is, Snap has a decent bankroll.
Yeah.
And, you may have heard Apple and Samsung have been going at it for
true.
years. And, I mean, the only people who've won in that, as far as I can tell, are the lawyers. I mean, I don't know what the sums are, but I've got to imagine they've paid the lawyers $50 million or more.
Oh, they're up there.
Apple
they have to
and Samsung in these disputes. And I'm just like, and neither one of them has gotten much out of it as far as I can tell.
Oh, man, that's crazy. What do you feel is the one biggest business triumph to date for you?
Well, I would say that it's just the fact that I went from that lowest low of where I was when I started my firm to having what I would say is a successful practice where I make a good living, but at the same time, I have not had to miss a single one of my daughter's doctor's appointments, and I'm able to, randomly take an afternoon off if the weather's nice to just go spend time with my family. And to me, that is the big triumph, and that's the big joy of being an entrepreneur. That being said, Antonio, we're sitting here on a Saturday recording this, and so that's the downside of being an entrepreneur is you have to do a lot more. But the triumph for me is that I've built a law practice that is successful, that is paying the bills, that gives me a good living, and still allows me to have the family life that I want. Yeah,
that sounds absolutely beautiful to me.
Yeah, and it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Positive stress, I guess, is what they call it.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Hang tight. Successors will return to our conversation with Bobby Klinck as well as quick success after a word from our sponsors. Are you tired of using a ton of different services to help run your business? Here comes Zenlista to the rescue. With Zenlista, you can connect, post, schedule, and find content from all of your social media accounts. List and auto-update your company listing on over 300 sites and search engines. Generate live leads sent directly to your email. Monitor and manage your reviews and reputation before they're available to the public. See how you compare to your competitors. You can even create landing pages to gain new clients. Along with free one-on-one training after sign-up, Zenlista has all of this and so much more, all in one place. Exclusive for the first 250 listeners, receive 75% off the regular price. Sign up today at the4pos.com/Zen. Again, that's the4pos.com/ZEN. Are you a busy person who works day in and day out? Do you find yourself feeling tense and tired all the time with stress and sicknesses controlling your life, possibly creating a sleep disorder? You know about all the current health topics but don't find the time? Maybe Cedric, Patrick, and Philippe at Bellison can help. Aside from creating modular supplements that can fit your very own needs, you can visit Bellison.com for tons of recipes, health-related articles, and more. Why modular supplements? Modularity is the key because you are not just standard. With standards as high as Bellison, you're buying from a company that helps take care of our environment, doesn't harm animals, and whose products are made of high-quality, premium plant-based ingredients in every capsule. That's Bellison.com. Did you know that you can cook healthy, exercise, and meditate in just 30 minutes a day? Bellison.com. From recipes and supplements to exercise and life hacks to be healthy, Bellison.com has it all. After Bellison, just imagine the immense possibilities you will have as the new you. Go ahead and give Bellison supplements a try. I use them every day, and I feel great, energetic, and focused. Visit Bellison now at Bellison.com. That's BELISAN.com and receive a 10% discount on your first order with coupon code THE4POS. So give them a shot. Compassion and quality without compromise. Bellison.com. And we're back with Bobby Klinck of Klinck LLC, intellectual property lawyers for startups and entrepreneurs. Now we get into the part of the show I like to call Quick Success, where you, Bobby, can inspire the successors to enhance their lives and businesses in the areas of knowledge, health, wealth, and spirituality. Bobby, what are you currently doing to enhance your knowledge?
I commit to spend time every day reading or trying to learn something about either my area of practice or my area of legal practice or an issue related to entrepreneurship, so marketing, sales, leadership, something like that. I don't try to do a ton every day, but I try to commit to do 15 minutes a day just so that every day I'm constantly learning a little bit more, and that's what I would say is the key to increasing your knowledge.
What are you currently doing to enhance your health?
I try to go to the gym on a regular basis. I have to admit I don't get there as often as I would like, but I was at the beginning of the year for about 2 months, and then I got busy, and I'm going to try to get back to it again. I think I feel much better. It doesn't have to be a ton, but if I at least get to the gym for 30 minutes a day, it'll make me feel better.
Oh, yeah. Moderate exercise does a lot of good for us. What are you currently doing to enhance your wealth?
It's doing what I'm doing right now. It's trying to educate entrepreneurs and give them some information because, like I said, my view, if I can give information to entrepreneurs about the importance of what I do, I feel very confident that I will have plenty of business and plenty of wealth in the future. What are you currently doing to enhance your spirituality? I meditate daily. I think that's important just because it gives you time with yourself and to develop kind of your own spirituality and your own sense of self. And so I do that is try to spend about 20 minutes a day meditating. What's your favorite time of day to do meditation? Morning. Really, for meditation and for working out, the only way I can get it done is in the morning. When I'm at my peak, I'm getting up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning, meditate, then hit the gym, and then get back and do a little bit of kind of marketing work before my daughter wakes up. That's kind of the ideal morning for me.
Yeah, I like getting up early and getting some things done. I'm kind of like a cannonball out of the cannon. I'm sure I annoy everyone around me when I wake up and they're still groggy.
Well, I'm kind of the same way. Luckily, I mean, I get up and head downstairs, so I don't bother people. But yeah, I mean, I found if I try to do things like that, if it's meditation or if it's working out or marketing or things that don't seem like a burning issue for my business. If I try to wait and do those at the end of the day, they just don't get done.
Yeah.
So that's why I basically do them in the morning. And then, look, if I have work for a client that has to get done and it hasn't been done at night, I'll get it done because I know it has to be done. So I try to do the other things that I'm more likely to not do in the morning to make sure I get them done. Pertaining to success, what do you feel is the best piece of advice you've received? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I don't know where I first heard that phrase, but I've heard it or a variation of it many times, and I think it's an important concept to keep in mind. If you constantly wait for things to be perfect, you'll never act and you'll never do anything. Better to have a pretty good plan that you've actually executed than a perfect plan that's sitting on a shelf and you've never done anything with. Yeah, I've heard that throughout the years of being a musician. Everybody's like, just put out a demo. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just need to put out a product or else nobody's going to know you exist. Yep. Yeah. Are there any modern technologies or apps that help you achieve success? So I would say there's apps that I use for various things. I mentioned that I meditate. I use the Calm app for meditation. I've heard people talk about a bunch of different ones. It's just one of the ones I found, and they put out a daily meditation that is 10 minutes, and then I pick another 10-minute meditation from the list, and so I use that for that. For my business, one of the things I found, and I'm one of those do-it-yourselfers, so I tinker with a website. I want a website where I can do the things myself, and forever – I don't know if you've tried building a website, Antonio, but one of the biggest things is finding a good theme if you're on WordPress. Mm-hmm. And I found this company, Thrive Themes, that is just fantastic. They have themes, but they also have plugins and add-ons that are built to help you do things like build your mailing list. And just once I found that, I fell in love, and I've been using it now for a while. And it is kind of the ideal theme and plugin maker in my view. Yeah, there's not much of a secret that I'm a big nerd. And man, I'm on my computer a lot more than I should be. And web development is something I've been doing for years, and I got to admit, I enjoy it. Yeah, and I'd found themes before, and the problem was I was never quite happy, and you'd have to do some coding, but I was not good at, like I said, I'm dangerous, so I wasn't good enough to. And again, this is getting pretty technical, but to build a child theme where then I can continue, I could update the theme without losing any changes I'd made. Yeah. So this Thrive Themes, I just found they have, it actually has kind of a drag and drop builder, which I tried ones that had that before and they were never any good because they didn't work right. But this one does. And so you can customize everything, color, everything. And then when you update it, you don't lose any of it. So it's just fantastic. That sounds good. I'll give that a look. What new thing, book, activity, technology, or skill are you excited to learn and dive into? There's so many. I would say I am currently trying to learn how to use LinkedIn for marketing. So I don't know if that's a skill. I think it's a skill. Apparently it is a skill because everybody's telling me that site is extremely powerful. Well, and I think it depends on what you do. And for what I do, it really ought to be the focus of my social media marketing. And I just haven't taken the time to crack it yet. The problem that I face, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs face this, is nowadays because anybody can write and self-publish a book and put it on Kindle. Mm-hmm. If you go to Amazon and search, you find all this stuff and you have no idea whether these books are I don't know if they're worth a penny. So you're right. It's hard. So that's what I'm trying to kind of sort through a bunch of information on LinkedIn to understand how I should be using LinkedIn to my ultimate advantage. As far as helping our listeners be successful, what piece of advice could you give them? What I would say is that in any aspect of your life and business that you care about, you need to have a plan. And so that's obviously what I stress for my business is I help people put an intellectual property plan together. But stepping back, one of my favorite books is Living Forward, because it's a book about developing a life plan, which is kind of an idea of putting together an overall plan for your life in various buckets. And so you understand what do you care most about, and that you understand kind of your hierarchy of values. And so I think that we should all plan more, because if you don't have a plan, you will drift through life and you will ultimately live life by someone else's plan. So I would suggest to people in their business and their life, take the time to create a plan.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and they said to build your own narrative. And I thought that was extremely powerful. So, yeah, that makes me want to work a lot harder.
Yeah, it's the same concept, and it's the problem is planning takes time up front, and so it's much easier right now to not plan. But the problem is, if you don't plan, a year from now you're not going to be happy with your situation. So I stress and I try to get people to do it, and I'm not perfect at it, I have to admit it, but I that's what I really stress to people is one of the most important things they can do.
All right, successors. So Bobby has a special exclusive offer for you. Bobby, what is that?
Well, so I have a 4-part email course that people can take on intellectual property planning. So it will basically walk them through the process of developing a strategy for kind of intellectual property for their business. So both how to kind of harness their own assets, but also how to avoid infringing other people's. And as part of it, they'll get emails over 4 days in a row with a 10 to 15 minute video. You'll see I'm not a stuffy lawyer. I'm sitting in my office in a button-up shirt of some sort, I think. Mm-hmm. You also get a free copy of my book, The Entrepreneur's IP Planning Playbook, or a PDF of it. And then 3 forms that you can use in the process of creating that plan. And you can sign up for that exclusive offer by going to www.klinkllc.com/podcast. And again, Klinck is spelled Klinck. So it's KLINCKLLC.com/podcast.
All right, successors, that's Bobby's 4-part e-course on creating an intellectual property plan. That's KlinkLLC.com/podcast. Excellent. These will be all in the show notes as well. Finally, Bobby, how can our listeners connect with you?
Well, so an easy way is going to my website at KlinkLLC.com. There's contact forms. I think I even have my direct email address on there if you want to reach out to me, and a phone number. You can also download either of my books for free. I'm not trying to make a bunch of money on those books. I'm trying to give the information away to as many people as possible. Or alternatively, you can follow me on Twitter at Bobby Klinck, and that's BOBBY Klinck on Twitter. I tweet about things related to entrepreneurship, startups, and then some about intellectual property. And when I have new blog posts, that gets posted there, et cetera. So you can learn a little bit and hopefully be slightly entertained at least.
All right, successors, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with author and business owner Bobby Klinck. Please check out more successful content like this at the4pos.com, as well as other ways you can listen. There's podcasts everywhere you look. They're on the ground, they're in the air, they're everywhere these days. Check it out, give us a rate, give us a review, and it's all for free. Thanks for listening, and prepare for success. Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks.
If you want to be more driven and more motivated in your life or business, go to the4pos.com/free book and grab a copy of my book, Indulge Your Affirmative Motivation Within. 25 motivations of personal development and life success. Get it now at the4pos.com/free book. Again, that's the4pos.com/free book.